Hello friend, this is Ryan Hicks of TalkToProfit.com, and today I want to talk to you about thinking like a billionaire. Now I have to first state from the very outset that I am not a billionaire, but I've done very well in life. I've created numerous multi-million-dollar businesses, and the reason I'm telling you that is because I don't want this to be like, oh well, I got $1 billion. I'm not saying anything like that. Also, it's important to note that the information I'm giving you is based on my studying of many billionaires. Now, I've only known one person who is a billionaire. At the time, he was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But I noticed a bunch of these traits in him and the way he behaved. One of the things I also noticed is that many billionaires, for whatever reason, are what is called in teaching unconsciously competent. Meaning they are excellent at what they do, they're extremely competent, but they don't know how they're competent. They don't know how to do it. They couldn't explain to you how to do what they do. They might be able to explain to you the tactics and stuff, but they couldn't tell you the mindset. They couldn't tell you the exact inner workings of what got them to the point of becoming a billionaire. They are unconsciously competent. They're not consciously aware of the competency that got them to where they are. So these are the ones who you'll hear say, just do what you love. I've heard a billionaire go on an interview and numerous times that's what he said that was the key to him being a billionaire, was doing what he loves. All you gotta do is look around. There are people on unemployment, there are people on welfare, sitting around doing what they love, playing video games, watching movies, eating food, and they're bringing no money in. And they'll never be billionaires. That's delusion. So that idea, well, of course it's good to do what you love if you can, but just doing what you love does not mean you're going to become a billionaire. So there are many billionaires out there that are saying things that aren't going to get you to become a billionaire. They aren't going to get you even in the stratosphere of even becoming remotely successful. Now, some people have accused these billionaires of, well, they're just planting erroneous seeds out there. They're just giving these platitudes to deceive people because they don't want any competition. I don't really think it's that nefarious. I think it's legitimately, they're just unconsciously competent. They haven't really sat down and pondered how they got to where they are. They write numerous books about being successful and things like that, but those are ghost written. They're not even written by them. They're just interviewed, and then somebody writes a book, gives the platitudes of do what you love and all that kind of stuff. And that's that. Meanwhile, the average person can't read that book and become a billionaire. They're not going to read that book and become even a millionaire. They're not going to read that book and become successful in any regard because there's nothing there of real value. But the real way of thinking like a billionaire is completely different from what average people do. In many cases, you could just look at what average people, what poor middle class people do, and do the opposite, and you will be on the path to becoming a billionaire. Or at least a very successful millionaire. Little things like ownership. When you talk to a poor person, what do they talk about? If you're talking about material goods, they want to own their car. You suggest leasing a car to them? Oh no, I gotta own it. Everything to them is about ownership. But to successful people, especially billionaires, it is about control. They understand that ownership doesn't imply anything except more liability in many cases. And more expense. They'd rather control things than own them. Now they own certain things, of course. But if you're going to have 2 cars and one of them you drive only on the weekends, why are you buying that and owning it when you could just lease it? You pay a lot less per mile driven. You get the exact same experience of ownership, having control over it, and way less expense. Now that's just one little simple thing, but another thing that I've noticed is that they often have very little in liquid assets. Meaning they don't have, if they're a billionaire, they don't have $1 billion of cash in the bank. They may not even have $1 million in the bank. Who knows? Because when they do have cash in the bank, it's because they've liquidated something and they're going to use that money to invest in something else. They are constantly having their money work for them. Now, this does not mean what the poor person will do or the average person. To them, investing is going and putting in a 401k or in the stock market. Now, those could be valuable for an individual, but you're never going to get any wealth doing that. Those things are just going to sustain you in mediocrity at best. The 401k especially is just for when you get old, then you can start living off some of that money and live in mediocrity. You're not going to live the life of a billionaire. You're not going to live the life of a millionaire even. But they're investing in successful things. So to think of the example of somebody who owns a grocery store locally, well, that's great, but what does the billionaire do? The billionaire may own dozens of grocery stores, probably hundreds. And another thing they often will do is they're not the full owner. See, a poor person will think of in that way of, well, I got to own this business. And they want complete ownership, realizing that's giving them more liability. What if the business fails? You lose 100% of your investment. Plus, if you're the sole owner, you're normally the one also there working it. And you're certainly not going to make $1 billion working at a grocery store that you own. And in many cases, those owner-worker type situations, the owner makes less than the employees make because they're working so many more hours. But the billionaire, what will they do? They'll take on partners. You heard of billionaires owning sports teams that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But there's a partnership. There's a bunch of partners that go in on that ownership. Not just one person in most cases. The reason being, unless that one person bought it a long time ago for a real good price. But there's generally partners involved. Everybody's kind of dividing their risk. And then they can take the rest of the money they have and invest in other endeavors. And everybody has limited risk in that business if it happens to fail or if it doesn't make as much profit. Now you may say, well, but they can't get all the profit then. Yes, but they have other investments they want to invest in as well. The billionaire is never, ever invested in only one thing. They're normally invested in thousands of things. Now, you as an individual right now, you can't invest in thousands of companies. You can't be a partner in 100 companies. But maybe you can be a partner in one. Instead of thinking, I got to own the entire company, what if you just have 10% ownership? What if you have 50%? It doesn't have to be the complete thing. It's also important in that regard, when you take on an ownership part in a business, that you can also have that original founder of the business working it and building it. They have the desire, they have the know-how, they have the ability to build that business up. And sometimes they just need an investor to give them some more capital in order to build it. But everything's on the table for them to do it. They have all the tools to do it. They just need you to come in with some investment. But if you're just thinking you have to own the whole thing, you'll sabotage yourself because that person generally doesn't want to sell their business. But they may want to sell part of it in order to get some capital to build to the next level. So it's important, if you're going to be successful in business, you're going to be successful in life, you need your money out there working for you. You need it building and bringing more money back to you. You need to look at it as a seed you've sown and it's reaping a harvest, some 30, some 60, some 100-fold. You don't need to have it sitting in a bank account somewhere because you need to have that money on you at all times, earning no money. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with, because I want to keep this short, is they're often peculiar in the way they behave and how they value material things. Think of a poor person that wins the lottery. What do? They go out and buy a mansion. That's one of the first things they do. They go buy Rolls Royces and all these cars, oftentimes getting them to the point of a negative net worth because they have to go in all kinds of debt, way more than the money they brought in. And then they're not factoring in, obviously, property taxes and things like that. It becomes a snowball downhill into bankruptcy. That's happened so many times with lottery winners. But then there's billionaires, like right now, one of the richest men in the world lives in a little tiny house, worth less, way less than most people, average people, who do not have 100 millionth of the net worth he has, and he's living in a house way more modest than theirs. Now, he owns mansions that he rents out and is selling and stuff like that, but there's a different mindset. When you get to that point, you don't have to impress people with your wealth. You have the wealth. Everyone knows it. So you don't have to go buy a mansion unless you want it. And this is a thing I've mentioned numerous times over the years, not just about billionaires, but millionaires in general. Having an abundance mentality is that you can do what you actually want. If you want to buy a $15 pair of shoes and that's what you like and enjoy, you'll do that. You don't have to go buy a $1,500 pair of shoes so you can impress people. You just buy what you want. It doesn't have to be the most expensive thing. It can just be the thing that you actually want. And that's a freeing and abundant mentality that people need to have. And if you're ever going to become a great success in life, you have to have that mentality. You're not doing things to impress people. It's not impressive to just have a number of investments. No, people are impressed when they see a bank account with millions of dollars in it. That's impressive to them. Or they see you out just spending money left and right. They're not impressed if they see you driving a Ford or a Toyota, but they are impressed when they see you driving a Rolls Royce. Now, I'm not telling you can't have nice things. You can have whatever you want. God gives you freely, liberally, generously, graciously, all things richly to enjoy. But do you really want those things? This is very important. Are you really from your heart just trying to impress people? Just trying to make a show, look like you're this success? Maybe you are a success, but you want to now show the world you're a success. Because if that's your mentality, that just leads to debt and failure. Nothing good's coming from that. That's not an abundance mentality. That's trying to appease other people. That's trying to impress other people. The abundance mentality just wears whatever it wants, just buys whatever it wants. It doesn't have to be the top of the line thing, the most expensive thing, if that's not what you want. So my friend, I want to leave you with those three things, those 3 points, major points. I think if you will take onto them, latch onto them, really meditate on what I've talked about today, it will help you become a greater success. You may never become a billionaire. You may not even want to be a billionaire. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. That may not even be where you want to go at all. And I'm not talking about just accumulating stuff. This is obviously, you have your needs and wants met, you can have whatever you want, and then you can also bless the world and do good in the world. Do even more good. If you're poor and you're broke, or you're just middle class, you're barely scraping by because you have all this debt, trying to impress other people with your cars and houses and stuff, you can't do much in the world. You can't be the blessing you need to be, and that you want to be. But if you have that pure heart, that righteous heart, as the scripture says, wealth and riches are in his house, and his righteousness endureth forever. My friend, I pray this was a blessing for you. May God bless you richly.